4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If there were 12 donuts and I ate 4 of them, and I want to know what fraction of the box did I eat. Tell me what fraction of this box I ate.
4 out of 12.
4 out of 12, right? I do the part that I ate out of the whole box. Part over whole. So that is where this formula, and it's technically not really a formula, but that's where this formula or equation is coming from. Part over whole is kind of what you ate, or the whole thing. And we've already talked about that percent means out of 100. So part over whole represents percent out of 100. So, when it talks about your daily allowance, that represents how much you can eat in the whole day. So 3,500 represents which of those numbers?
The whole.
Your whole day. That represents 3,500 calories is how much you can eat in the whole day. So 3,500 is your whole daily allowance. Now, that little bowl of Cheerios,
Then 5.
that was the part that you had for breakfast. So that little bowl of Cheerios only represents a part of what you've eaten that day. Now, it says what percent. So percent is what we're trying to find. And percent is always over 100. We good so far? Now, when we do these, we always multiply the numbers that are diagonally across from each other. So we're going to multiply those two numbers, and we're going to divide by our loaner, the number that's across from the variable. So we multiply these two, and we divide by our loaner. So we're going to do 95 times 100 divided by 3,500. So 95 times 100 divided by 3,500. We good?
Yes, ma'am.
So that little breakfast, that little bowl of cereal that we ate, represents 2.7% of our entire day's calories. Now, we don't have to whoop-whoop anything as long as we're using this formula, because they said that they realize that X is a percent. So we don't have to whoop-whoop because they know that X is a percent. You with me? All right, let's look at another one. In a study of U.S. rivers, this many miles of the river were studied. According to the U.S. Environment Protection Agency, the EPA, it was found that 36% of the total rivers had impaired water quality. How many rivers had crappy water? So they looked at a bunch of rivers, and part of the rivers had crappy waters. 36% of them had crappy waters. I want to know how many miles had crappy waters. So we're going to use the same thing. We're going to use part over whole. They studied a bunch of water, and part of them had crappy water, and that represented a certain percent out of 100. So we've just got to figure out where to put stuff. Okay? So we only have two numbers, y'all. We have this number, and we have this number. So where do you think, 36 seems like the easiest one to put. Where do you think we're going to put 36?
On the top, on top of the 100.
36 has what behind it? 36 is going to be my percent, because 36 has a percent behind it. So 36%. Oops, move these down. 36%. So it's going to go in the percent column, or spot. 100 is always under the percent. Now, my only other number is the 693,905. Does that represent the part of the water that was crappy, or the whole water that I looked at?
The
it was the whole rivers that were studied. Because look, it says how many miles were impaired. So we're trying to find the part that was crappy. So we're trying to find the part that was crappy, and the whole river that we did was 693,905. So this time they gave us the percent and they gave us the whole. We're trying to find the part. So what two numbers am I going to multiply? 693,905 times 36, and then I'm going to divide that by 100. So this tells me how many miles of river were crappy. So X is going to be 249,805.8 miles of river were impaired or crappy. And they may want it to the nearest whole number. What would this be to the nearest whole number?
249,806.
249,806 if they wanted it to the nearest whole number. But you can have part of a mile when you're talking about rivers. And we're going to do a lot of these, so don't freak out on me. Alright, so that was part over whole. Anytime I'm looking at a whole group of things and I want to know what the part is and it has a percent involved, that's what's telling me that I'm going to do part over whole. Alright, most of us have seen a circle graph before. This says that this one talks about the county library and how many DVDs it has. The library owns 1,743 DVDs, and this is how they're classified. So of those DVDs, 27% are comedy DVDs, 14% are romance DVDs, 11% are horror DVDs, 8% are science fiction DVDs. So we want to know how many are romance.
14%.
Okay, so if we are looking for romance DVDs, Pat looked down here and said 14%. Well, it didn't say what percent are romance. It said how many are romance. So I want to know how many DVDs do I have to look at.
That's a trade.
So we're going to do, again, part over whole equals percent over 100.
So the part is 1,743 in the whole.
Okay, 1,743 is going to be the whole number of DVDs that the library has. So 1,743 is my whole number of DVDs. 100 is always under my percent, because percent is always out of 100. Okay? What other number do I have to look at?
14 is
14 is going to be my what?
percent.
Percent. And I'm trying to find what part is romance. How many of those 1,743 are going to be romance DVDs? So I multiply the two that are diagonally across from each other. So I'm going to do 1,743 times 14 and divide by 100. Now, we're talking about DVDs, so can I have a part of a DVD? No. So what is my answer going to be?
244.
So X is going to be 244 romance DVDs. I cannot have part of a DVD. Cool? Keep throwing things that you have. Alright, we take these same directions and pull down so that I can have it with this next problem. And once you know how to set them up, they're not that bad, but you're doing the same thing over and over again. This time I want to know foreign DVDs. Let's say I'm studying a foreign language and I want to know how many foreigns. We're going to do part over whole equals percent over 100. And we're looking for foreign DVDs. 8%. So 8 is going to go in my percent. Percent is always over 100. We only have one other number. What is that other number?
1,743.
And where does that 1743 go?
Whole to the bottom.
That is to the bottom. 1743 represents the whole. And we're trying to find the part that are foreign. And when we multiply the two numbers that are diagonally across, and we divide by the loner. So we are going to multiply those two and divide by that one.
That's the proportion.
Who?
This is like proportion.
This is proportions. When you have two things that are set up, two fractions that are set up diagonally, side by side that are equal, that is called proportion. See, you know more than you think you do. Now, because we're talking about DVDs must be a whole number. You can't check out from the library half a DVD. So DVDs must be a whole number. So how many DVDs are foreign? 139 foreign DVDs. These are proportions when you have two fractions that are equal. Good?
Yeah.
All right. Questions about these? Part over whole. And usually I do part over whole when the question is like pretty wordy. Now we're going to do, I think, the short cute ones. Okay? The short cute ones are when I use what's called is over of. And I don't use is over of on the long ones because sometimes those get you sucked in. Is over of equals percent over 100. I use these when the directions are, or when the problem is very short and cute. Hold on, let me capture this and I'm going to send to the current page. Oh, that's slow. What is 6.5% of 150? And we're going to do several of these because setting them up, I'm coming. I'm going to move this down. Okay. Okay. Now, when you read these, some people get them really easy and some people get them really bad. So, I'm going to give you some hints. I start with numbers that are at the front or the back of the problems. I don't start with numbers that are in the middle of the problems because like 6.5, I have some people say, well, it's next to the word is, it's next to the word of, and it has a percent sign, and they freak out on me. So start with numbers that are at the beginning or the end of the problem. So if I start with the number 150, what is 150 next to? Of. So the of is going to be 150. So I've already used the 150. And I've already used the word of. Now, I go to my next number, 6.5.
Just percent.
Do you agree that 6.5 is next to is and is also next to percent? What trumps everything?
Percent.
Percent. It is riding dirty with the percent. 6.5%. So my percent is going to be 6.5. I don't have to whoop whoop anything because it's saying I know that that's a percent going in there. So you put in 6.5%. Now, what is? That's telling me that my is what I don't know. So when you read it, y'all, if you read it from left to right, just like you read every other English sentence, watch this. What is 6.5% of 150? So your what is 6.5% of 150. Okay? So when I write it, it's going to be x over 150 equals 6.5 over 100. And this is when you say, okay, Ms. Cooper, you can leave. I know what to do now. I cross multiply, 150 times 6.5 divided by 100, my answer's gonna be 9.75. Now, you only need a percent sign if you're solving for the percent. In this problem, I was solving for the X, which is in the is spot. So my answer's just gonna be 9.75. 9.75. We good? Now, for the next one, start with numbers that are at the beginning or the end of the problem. So at the end of the problem is the number 15. What is it next to? 15 is next to the word is. So the is going to be 15. Now, I've used the is and I've used the 15. So now I go to the next number, is 75. Even though it's next to of and is has already been used. So what is this going to be? Of. Which leaves what percent? That's what you're trying to find. So we have 15 over 75 equals x over 100. 15 over 75 equals x over 100. We multiply the two numbers that are diagonally across, so 15 times 100 divided by 75. Now, pay attention to what you're solving for. We are solving for x, which is the percent. So that means my answer needs to have a percent sign behind it. So it's going to be x equals 20%. We don't have to woot-woot because it knows that it's a percent that we're solving for. Cool? All right, I'm going to let y'all try number 52. 10% of what number is 75? 10% of what number is 75? Don't holler it out though. % of what number is 75? Personally, I start with numbers that are at the beginning or the end. So I'm going to start with the 75. 75 is next to the word is. Now, at first glance, you're going, there ain't no other numbers. But there is. 10 is your other number. 10 is next to the word percent. And I have a lot of people say, they skip over to the word of. And I'm like, what's right next to it? Right next to it is the percent, so 10%. So it's 10% of what is 75? 10% of what is 75? So your problem is going to be 75 over x equals 10 over 100. 75 over x equals 10 over 100. We go to your calculator, we're going to multiply the two numbers that are diagonally across and divide by the loaner. Your answer should be 750. You look and see what number you're solving for. We're solving for the of, which means your answer is just going to be that plain number. So X is going to be 750. You're solving for the of. We good? All right, now we're gonna go into some real life problems. Tax and tip. Okay, which is more percentage problems. So let me make this one bigger. Let me move down and move down and move down. Okay, let's start with the top one. This is a 4-part question. According to the tipping page, first of all, do y'all know how much tip you should leave? What is the average tip that you should leave?
10%.
And some people don't realize this, but when waitresses go to work, they make $2 and something cents an hour. Yeah,
213.
$2.13 an hour. That's it. Yeah. And unless you've ever been a waitress, and I have people say, why are you going to be a waitress getting paid $2.13 an hour? You work for the tips.
Oh, yeah, that's what she, yeah.
Yeah, you work for the tips. And so if you go out to eat at a place where you sit down and you are being waited on, you are going there expecting to leave a tip. So the average tip is 10%. And if they're good, you should expect to pay 15%. So if they keep your glass full and
We have to go on Friday, not for that.
it should be good.
She was good. We get off beat. My daughter, she work at Pizza Hut.
So
And-
she understands.
Yeah.
Waitresses understand.
And she like to pay beat. She's the type of person, she like to give, say, Mom, you need to, cause she was wonderful. That girl, we made her quick, cause we get off pizza, cause she was excellent.
Until you understand, because a lot of people just say, I'm going to give them $1.
Mhm,
No matter what I'm going to give them $1. But until you understand, because in some restaurants, they have to what's called tip out
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
people. And in some restaurants, you have to pay to the bartender or pay
Yeah, that's
to the
what it is.
person.
And she was telling us that,
Percentage.
like,
A
if they
percentage.
have a credit card, they have to pay the hostess out of their credit card. But if they make tips of their own, they don't have to give them to
Right.
There's all these different rules and regulations, and there's some people, like, if somebody brings out your food that's different, and every restaurant is different, but if somebody brings out your food that's different than, like, if some restaurants have food runners, sometimes they get paid out of your tip jars, and sometimes the bartender gets paid out of your tip jars, or sometimes the hostess gets paid out of your tips. And some restaurants, they put all the tips in one jar and then they separate them. So every restaurant is different. And if they get paid on a credit card versus being left cash is totally different. But a lot of people don't understand that some people work the whole night and they go home with less than what they made, because sometimes you have to tip out at the end of night and you end up paying more than what you, by the time you tip out the bartender and tip out the hostess and tip out, and if nobody left you any money and you're having to pay all these other people, you ended up having to pay to work. Now, some nights it's good and you make money and it's a chance you have to take. So, this next problem talks about leaving a tip. So, based on this website, it's appropriate to tip waitress or waitresses 15 to 20% of the total restaurant bill, including the tax. So Mary and Keith's dinner costs $43.50 before tax, and the tax rate is 6%. What is the tax on the dinner? So we're going to do the whole thing ourselves. We're going to do the tax, we're going to do the tip, we're going to do the total, we're going to do everything. Now, there's a couple of different, I'm going to show you two methods. I'm going to show you the part over whole method, and I'm going to show you what I call the shortcut method. Some of y'all are good at tax and good at discount, so some of y'all use the shortcut method. Now, some of y'all, and there's going to be two ways, and I'm going to show you both ways. Some of y'all are going to do part over whole equals percent over 100, and some of y'all are going to do what I call as the shortcut. Now, if we do part over whole, do you agree the whole is going to be the meal? We went and ate the whole meal. So our meal is going to be the whole. $43.50 is gonna be our whole meal. Now, right now, we're just worried about the tax. So what percent is going to be my tax percent? 6%. So we're gonna do 6 out of 100. So my part is going to be how much tax. Y'all with me?
Yeah.
So if I go to do my cross multiplication over here, I'm going to do 6 times 43.50 and then divide by 100. So you got to understand what you're doing. What does that $2.61 represent? The part. But in reality, what does it represent?
Tax.
The tax. Okay? Now, my question says, what is the tax? So, $2.61 represents my tax. Now, the shortcut method, and some of y'all use this, the shortcut method is to say, 6% of $43.50. Well, y'all, what is 6% as a decimal? 0.06. And what does the word of mean in math?
Divide.
Of, multiply. So I have some people that will do it as the shortcut method. They'll change 6% to 0.06 and they'll multiply it. So that will give them 0.06 times 43.50. It's still going to give them the $2.61. Now, I want you to pay attention that if you use the shortcut method, you have to whoop-whoop. If you don't use the shortcut method, there's no whoop-whoop. So, according to what method you use, is when do I whoop-whoop and when do I not whoop-whoop? That is the question. So if you use part over whole, you are not going to whoop-whoop because it knows that that's 6%. If you do the shortcut method, you've got to change 6% to a decimal. So it's according to what method you want to use as to whether you whoop-whoop or not. We good? All right. Now, my next question says, what is the total bill including tax? So how would I get that? If I go to Walmart and I buy $43.50 worth of stuff, and what do I do with the tax?
You gotta
You
add.
You add it. So the total is going to be my meal plus the tax. So how much was my meal? $43.50 plus how much was my tax? $2.61. So if I go to my calculator, I'm going to do the $43.50, which was my meal, plus the $2.61. So right now, just the meal and the tax, I'm looking at $46.11. So my total, meal and tax, is $46.11. So that's all they wanted to know from question B. We good? Now, question C says, what if I decide to leave a 15% tip? So I am leaving a 15% tip of this $46.11. So I can either do this as a part over whole, or I can do this as a shortcut. Okay? Now, if I do it as a part over whole, what is my new whole? The $46.11, and what is my percent?
15.
The 15, because that represents my tip, out of 100, and I'm trying to find the part, which is now my tip. So that's gonna be 4611 times 15 divided by 100. Now, we're talking about money, y'all.
It's $6.92.
I did 4611 times 15, hold on. I didn't do mine right.
You sure did.
Times 15 divided by 100. Now,
So you got it right.
this is money.